Hi everyone, welcome to our second channel. I'm Nadia, this is Jake.
We know each other from work, I think.
We're colleagues.
And are married.
Very unprofessional.
Sorry.
Yeah, we wanted to talk about things in more depth because in Man Curing Thing, it's very short content usually, and
Yeah, it's very surface level, stupid, you know.
so we'll be talking about Midnight Mass today.
Okay, so here's the story. Well, do you want to tell what happened? Because I was watching it for a while, and then I stopped halfway through because
Yeah.
I was getting really bored. She finished it a while ago, and then just recently we were bored, and I was like, hey, I'm going to finish it.
Yeah, and then I finished it with you for the last couple episodes again.
Let's just get right into it.
Okay. So overall thoughts?
It was a very aggravating experience for me because
Okay, loved how much?
I liked the story. I liked the essence of the story, the monsters, yada, yada, yada. I like the concept of the priest coming into town and, being spooky and weird things going on, very Stephen King-esque. And Mike Flanagan is a director I liked, puts style into his stuff and into his writing, and you can tell it's a Mike Flanagan show for better or for worse. But there was a reason why I stopped watching halfway through.
Because I enjoy a lot of Mike Flanagan's work with Hill House and Bly Manor. It was very obvious how the story was going to go for me, and it definitely met my expectations, which is probably why, because you didn't really watch Hill House or Bly Manor that much, so I think you had like more of a different expectations because it's been a while for you.
I'm not usually...
It's not something you would watch like if you were on your own.
Well, I don't like binging shows that much. I don't know.
You just watched it so that you could have like a more stable home life so that I would complain about it. Of course, there are some cons to the way that he approaches projects in my point of view, because it starts out with some very incredible premise, but then it starts getting a little bit too deep into characterization.
The monologues
And things like that. If you watch it on your phone instead of the TV, then you want to kind of fast forward through it. I knew that was his style, but every single time the end is very satisfying for me. So because I know that this is just like, okay, this is a little bit of monologue part that I just have to get over in order to kind of get that gratification at the end, then like I kept watching it because of that. But I think because, like I said, you didn't watch Hill House.
Did you fast forward, though, when you first watched it?
I fast forwarded on one episode till, like, halfway, and then I really liked how it ended up being, so then I rewinded it and rewatched the whole thing.
Yeah.
But, no, actually I didn't, because I feel like his characterization in the story sometimes is so good.
Hi, Sidoni.
Sidoni.
Thank you. She wants to lick my ears.
This is another colleague of ours.
I felt like there was a satisfying ending. At every moment that Mike Flanagan does something interesting or the story progresses and it's like, there are really interesting characters. And I do enjoy these characters and get attached to them. But every time something interesting happens, it's like there's a dog on your back trying to lick your ears. Like, it's just slowed down and distracted by monologues, and it feels like a novel. Like, it would have worked in a novel, I feel like, and sometimes I feel like that's how he approaches TV. There's a lot of flexibility, but sometimes I wish that someone would be like, hey, we can take all this out. Like, we already get the point about these characters. We already understand the themes. It's just like, hitting you over the head with these themes, and it makes you feel stupid.
I know exactly what you're referring to towards the end, where Aaron is dying.
It's a flashback to a monologue
we
already heard.
It's a flashback to the monologue that we've already heard, but more in depth, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like at one point...
No, it was the same exact thing. It was like Mike Flanagan wrote this monologue for her and was like, wow, this is really profound. It's about life. And it's just a bunch of gibberish, really. I mean, and then it's repeated again. He's like, wow, this is really good writing. I'm going to do the exact same monologue. It takes like 15 minutes of screen time and play it again over something actually interesting and captivating. And it's like, I was so into the last episode and the last few scenes, and I was getting emotional. And then it's like, how about, what would make this better? A bunch of words. That's what I like in movies and TV.
Yeah, I actually didn't mind it as much. I definitely think that it could have been cut off, like the flashback. Maybe they shouldn't have presented it in previous episodes, and that could have just been reserved for the ending. I really gravitate towards like deep characterization, like just understanding that we have all of these like ideas about death, life, and the ideas of life, and what it means to live and what it means to like sacrifice, what it means to love.
Well, I think you have to be interested in like religion and
But it wasn't
the arguments
like,
about religion to really feel something for it, because there's a lot of like theological debates in it. And
I guess I like that, yeah.
to me, that's not very interesting because I don't know. I feel like my mind is made up already, you know.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily for me mean like my mind is made up or anything. Maybe I'm just more open-minded.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm just kind of cynical and closed off.
I think what I like about Mike Flanagan's work is the relatability of it all.
The scene in the church, and I think the second to last episode, where everyone is like convinced that this demon is an angel and walks in and they're all ready to kill themselves and then they all become vampires. One of the best scenes I've ever seen in TV, I think. I mean, that's the thing. It's like there's so many high points, and especially that was so good, such a great like horror moment. And then it gets watered down by all this other crap.
I don't think it was watered down, but like at the end, because look at what the end was. The end was basically these bunch of people singing, right? And then literally they disappear at once, and midway interrupted by death. The song is interrupted by death, and everything just becomes silent.
I'm fine with that, but they were singing all throughout the show.
I understand that, but like at the end, I feel like it kind of concludes and comes together because the girl, you know, she loses her leg again, right? She says, I can't feel my legs. So it's this whole idea of like this girl who wanted to walk so much, and at the end she was satisfied almost by like not being able to do that. And it kind of creates something like beautiful meaning of like what we want, what we think we want versus what we actually want.
I would have been fine with all of that, you know.
But I feel like the dialogue adds to those complexities.
Sometimes, but then there's 5 more pages of dialogue that's just repeating the same stuff.
I agree, yeah.
So that's the thing. I get the message, and then it goes on for 10 more minutes, belaboring the same point with more group singing. It's just stretching out the runtime.
Mike Flanagan just thinks, you know, he just really loves his own writing.
That's exactly it. It feels like, and I know that Mike Flanagan was like working on this project for a long time. You see like teasers in it and like Hush and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Which I love seeing that. And it makes it feel almost like this is his baby. This is his, you know, masterpiece that he's like, I can't change any of this. I've been thinking about these characters for so long and these dialogue. So I understand that like love for your own characters and stuff, but it becomes just masturbatory at a certain point. It becomes so self-indulgent.
No, I get it.
I just don't have the patience for a lot of it. That's why I stopped halfway through, because it's like, well, I'm glad I stuck with it. I am ultimately glad I stuck with it at the end, but I didn't get anything in it beyond a few great character moments and some great set pieces.
But at
the
end of the day, you still left like satisfied of the story itself.
I was gonna be really satisfied at the very end until it just went on and on with the...
You're talking about the dialogue about...
The dialogue.
With Aaron, who like passed...
Because it reminded me of everything that annoyed me about the show. So I don't think I could ever rewatch it.
Was it traumatizing to you?
Yeah, I don't think I could...
Traumatized you?
It annoyed me, and I don't think I could ever rewatch it again because...
You could rewatch the ending.
I could rewatch certain scenes, but... Yeah. You know, I feel sort of betrayed. Like, this was something really good was going here, and I was really into it and really cared about these characters. But then I felt pulled out of the drama. I felt pulled out of the story every time the author wanted to make a point.
And I understand, because, like, I definitely feel like I got pulled out of certain scenes. Me, though, it wasn't, like, it didn't make anything not worth it. It just was like, okay, I see how it tied up at the end together. But at points, I was definitely like, okay, we get the point.
You know, and some people love the monologues, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with loving this style of storytelling or this style of show.
So let's talk about Riley.
Okay.
So he gets out of jail, and then he goes back in. He's the only one who's not religious in the beginning, right? Who's not kind of like pulled in by this new priest. And then he eventually makes his way to the church, and the priest helps him out with his alcoholism and his addiction, and he's able to really confide in the priest. But then he sees red flags, and when he sees red flags, then he eventually discovers that his priest is a vampire. He can explore the world in a completely different way than he saw fit previously, but he also understands that means that he'll have this he'll be consumed by the starvation that will ultimately most likely hurt the people he loved the most. And I think it tied in beautifully to the beginning of the show where he was guilty because he ruined people's lives due to his previous lack of judgment. And at the end, he sacrificed himself and he had the courage to have a better judgment in order to protect the people that he loved and in order to not like make the same mistakes that he had previously. What do you think?
I didn't like him.
Okay.
I thought he was of the main characters. I thought he was pretty boring. Because I liked the introduction of him into the town. You know, going through this tragedy, being in jail, well, inflicting this tragedy. You know, going to jail. I thought that was good, but it just felt flat. You know, the relationship with the girl was kind of dull. The only thing that redeemed it is the end when he. I really thought he was going to eat her on the boat, but he didn't and sacrificed himself. And that kind of made his character seem better in hindsight than I think he was. He just felt very flat and like he didn't really have anything to do, you know?
I really like the love story between him and Aaron. He's trying to settle back into his old life and trying to figure out who he is and how he fits. Aaron, I thought, was like a pillar of hope for him, and he could really just kind of like, she was the only one he could be himself with, and it makes sense why he chose to like tell her face to face while he wrote his parents and sibling like letters, because he didn't really he knew that they weren't going to understand him the way that Aaron did. And then when he sacrificed himself, like he saw Aaron the way that she used to be when they first fell in love, when things were more simpler in their eyes, because you know he hadn't gone to jail, she wasn't pregnant. I felt really nostalgic into it because adulting is hard. It made me feel nostalgic of my own childhood in a sense, where like things were simpler with your friends, you know, you didn't like have to work and you could just like go after school and hang out if you weren't busy with a part-time job. But you know, it was just made simpler, where like all you had to worry about was your friends and love and just exploring yourself in a sense of who you are, your identity, instead of actually also trying to suppress who you are in order to just fit into society itself, which is what I think Riley was doing. It was really a person struggling to find himself as an adult when all he really wanted to do was be a child again with his high school sweetheart and not really have to succumb to the pressure of things, which I think like a lot of adults, if not every adult, feels that way.
I didn't see it that way.
What did you see it that? You just saw it as annoying?
I just thought it was boring.
All right. Do you want to talk about... Do you want to talk about Father Paul Hill? Do you want to talk about Father Paul Hill next?
Yeah. Okay. Father Paul was really interesting. He had a goal and objectives as a character. He wasn't just wandering around town. You know?
He wanted to turn everyone into vampires.
Yeah.
He's like this omniscient voice in the whole show, where it gets kind of boring sometimes when he inserts himself too much into the story, but he's more of a perspective, like an outside perspective, right. Because he has been away from this town, that he's able to have like a...
It's like our entry point.
Yeah, he's able to have a perspective and narration of this whole story in a way that audience can relate to it, because the people themselves, they're kind of in their own bubble, right, in this island. So
yeah, and the father character is really wonderful. When he gets into the story just starts to get moving along, because he's bringing hope to the town. He's bringing people together into the church. Church starts out, there's like 2 or 3 people, you know, at the church every day. Then it becomes packed. He
basically is an old man who tries to discover himself and one day finds a vampire who eats him. And then he survives and he gains some of his ability, but he realizes that he eventually needs to rely on blood. And the good thing about that part in his perspective is he ages backwards, but because of his beliefs that are a little bit skewed and misguided, he thinks that, like, you know, it doesn't matter. He justifies the way that he lives, like, even if it's at cost of others, because he believes that this is what a creator and a higher power wants of his life. He wants it so bad. He wants so bad to, like you said, bring hope to the town, that he's willing to believe anything that he can in order to be right. That there is that hope in there, right? And it kind of also, to me, shows like a bigger bigger idea of life is sometimes hopeless, and it's okay to find there's something beautiful in the hopelessness of things instead of trying to make something hopeful when it shouldn't be hopeful. It's sometimes like good to accept things as they are in order to just be more empathetic with people's situations and life itself than to just be positive about things that are otherwise negative, like social issues and things like that are very realistic. I think sometimes, like, to me, I interpret that as like a little bit of a analogy.
Well, to me, that's enough, because the shoehorning in the daughter plot in the last episode felt kind of rushed,
Well, I think that I felt
like it gave him motivation for some of the stuff he did and made him more of a good guy.
I think that that's what it was. That ties back into what you were saying earlier. Is Mike Flanagan, he develops a little bit too extra, a lot of like dialogue, unnecessary dialogue, and a lot of monologuing and things like that. But I also I think that the daughter storyline could have been explored a little bit more in the sense of hey, the doctor's mom, because the doctor's mom he's had an affair with for a while or in the past, while I don't know.
He gave it up in order to be faithful to the church.
Exactly, but he had a daughter as a result of that relationship, and then she never knew that Paul was her father. She grew up thinking that the person that her mother was married to was her real father. I feel like the story was convenient at the end in the sense of trying to get Paul to change his mind and to see how bad things that he was condoning really was. And to really understand that this is not a situation you should derive hope from. By using the daughters, and using the fact that his lover, his ultimate lover, doesn't condone his action, which really makes him rethink his belief system. At the end, Paul, the only thing that makes Paul realize how bad it is, the things that he's doing, is when his daughter gets shot, really. I did all of this so that I can have second chance with this woman, and it costed me everything.
Well, I think that's kind of where it makes him seem more stupid and bad, actually, because if he just is doing it because he has this faith, this absolute blind faith in, helping people and he really thinks this is an angel and he really wants to help others, that's why he's doing it, or is it just because he wants a second chance? With his family.
He wants a second chance. That's his ultimate motive. He wants it to help people.
It's more important than helping people.
Exactly.
Because he's hurting people. And he
exactly.
realizes that later.
Exactly. And that's the thing.
So he's a selfish character.
Well,
he's a bad
of course, he's a selfish character because he is making excuses of everything that he sees. He kills a couple of people because he overconsumes on them, and he's so willing to believe that it's all going to be worth it as long as he has a second chance. And Bev, who helps him justify his actions, really pushes Paul over the edge. And at the end, it's almost like Paul wouldn't have done everything that he has done if it wasn't for Bev just kind of
They make it seem like that. But
I hated Bev so much.
She was a good villain, yeah.
Oh God, I was so happy when she died. I don't think I've ever wanted someone to die so much in my life.
Well, that was a great moment, I think.
And it was great
when everyone's finding their inner peace before they die,
yes.
And she's about to on the beach, and you're just kind of
she just digs a hole, try to bury herself. I love the part where Riley's mom, Annie, she says, Bev, God loves my son as much as he loves you. Why does that make you angry? And she's just furious because she wants to be the special person. It's not that only if I can't have it, no one else can have it. It's no one else, but I can have it, and that selfishness and narcissism and her racism and her intolerance for other people who are not like her, how much that shows through. For me, when Annie was saying that to Bev at the end, it's you have seen how racist she's been all this time, and you just call it out now because she's no longer serving your purpose. And it just shows that mentality of the whole island, until the very end, where they're hopeless. There's no other way, and they ultimately themselves were the reason of their own demise. It showed a lot of hypocrisy and the forced realization of that hypocrisy. You know what I mean? I think I love about Mike Flanagan's work, he makes it a little bit more realistic. And I think that's why he over monologues sometimes, because he's really trying to understand or explore human humanness and what it means to be human and how different people really play aspects to generating societal beliefs.
The sheriff and his son was fantastic and heartbreaking when he's being restrained. That whole scene in the church, of course, when the sheriff's trying to stop it and shoots the demon, and then they hold him down while the son drinks the poison. That's horrifying.
And then dies.
That's so scary.
Yeah, and then ultimately, like, I was so happy that the sheriff died before he had to watch his son burn. That was like,
right.
You know, because like, and it's just like,
that was so heartbreaking.
But you know what I mean? Like, that's what I love about Mike Flanagan's work, is that you can really, like, it's different lives, different ideas, different choices in life, and how it is all brought together and what it means to be part of that community. All right, so overall, I like the story. I definitely think it's worth it. Yes, there are moments where you want to, like, a little fast forward. You're like, okay, like, it takes you out of the story because of the over characterization, I would say, but I think it's completely worth it to stick through it. What about you? What do you think?
Was it worth it? I'd say it was worth it, but not worth a rewatch. Depending on what your taste in stuff and shows are and everything, I would say if you like more like thematic based stuff, slow build kind of things, then this is probably good for you.
If you want to watch a show like you would read a book.
Yeah.
Then this is a show for you.
Yeah. But for me, not really my cup of tea. I do really hope Mike Flanagan gets to make The Dark Tower, though, because I feel like Mike Flanagan and Stephen King, obviously they share similar genres and are connected by the stuff they make, but I think they're similar in that they both have great moments and set pieces, but are frequently bogged down by very sentimental stuff, you know, like a lot of sentimentality, that sort of thing, in Stephen King and Mike Flanagan. I think Stephen King at his best kind of keeps that to a minimum, but Mike Flanagan definitely like cranks up the volume on that.
I overall recommend it. Jake overall kind of recommends it, basically, is the conclusion. That's it, right?
All right, yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you for watching our first video in this new channel.